Howdy YouTube, and welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So today we're going to be doing the painting stage on this Aston Martin DBS. So if you haven't already seen it, there is actually a prep work and masking stage that goes first, but if you're not interested in the prep or masking, just watch the painting stage. I'm actually going to be doing a third video in this series, and that's going to be the polishing stage. So be sure to hang around for that one, subscribe, and that will be coming either next week or the week after. I've settled into this shop quite well. I've been there for over a month now, and I'm settled into Melbourne as well. So hopefully we'll get back to one video per week as we used to when I was living there in Perth. But all of that aside, let's just get into the job. So yeah, obviously, as I mentioned before, the prep work and masking's all been done. I finished that off all nice and neat and some pretty solid prep work done. But to be honest, not a great deal changes whether or not you're working on a $500 Hyundai or you're working on a $500,000 Aston Martin like I am here. The procedure really does stay the same. It's actually something that I said to my current boss just last week. I said, look, at the end of the day, like if you can make a $500 Hyundai i20 or whatever it be look perfect, well then you can make your $500,000 Aston Martin look perfect. At the end of the day, it's just a panel and it's just paint. So look, those who have been following my channel for a while know that I've always been the one to do these kind of supercars anyway. At all of my previous shops, I've worked in prestige shops for quite a long time, so it hasn't really been that much of a big deal working at this shop. Now, in saying all of that, they do go a little bit above and beyond on certain aspects of the trade, and to be honest, it's mainly the polishing. So like they will remove the tiniest little pinprick of a D-nib, and that's pretty much it. So I mean, in my previous video I made a mention that you're not going to spend as much time on a Hyundai i20 or like your $500 Hyundai or Daihatsu or whatever it be as you're going to on your supercars. You know, like this car here, look, I believe that this car here deserves a little bit more attention than an average everyday runabout, the kind of car that you drive down to the shops and you get dents, parking dents in, and you can tell by looking at a car if the owner even cares that much about it. But in saying all of that, like, you're still going to match the color properly, you're still going to prep it properly, you're still going to mask it properly. But as I say, the main thing is, look, you might speed up some of those procedures. It's actually one thing that I was saying to a prospective boss recently. He was saying, oh, you know, you don't have to rush. And I said, just because you're rushing doesn't mean you have to be doing a bad job. And that's one thing that I've always prided myself on, is being able to do good quality work, but also fast, you know what I mean? So like I'm doing my best to get these kind of cars done as fast as possible, but perfection does take a little bit more time. So look, this car here, like Aston Martin don't treat this car anywhere near like Hyundai treat their cars. So why should I, if you know what I mean? Like this car here gets sanded back flat and then buffed up like a sheet of glass, so there's no orange peel left in the finish when we finish buffing it all up. Hyundai don't do that. Most other manufacturers don't do it. I think some of the high-end like British cars, Bentleys and even the Rolls Royce, I think they're all sanded back flat. And I was making a mention to it in my previous video. It's something that as a painter I actually do really appreciate. So previously paint used to just be something to tidy something up, you know, like I used to always own cheap cars, so you know, $2,000 cars, and I'd usually buy them in sort of average condition. I'd then, you know, spend $500 to $1,000 and just give them a quick tidy up, and I mean your off the gun finish is always going to be better than what it used to look like, you know what I mean? And then like I do actually have some people telling me that you should be doing your best on everything, and I'm not quite sure if they like fully understand what I mean by like going above and beyond your average paint job. Like, yeah, as I say, the amount of time and effort that it takes to And I still believe that there's no such thing as the perfect paint job, so don't get me wrong there. Like they're still, like you will always be able to find some imperfections even from your factory paint job. But I guess my point is that you're just not going to spend like days and days and days buffing up your old XF Falcon. Like, it came from faded old paint, it came from dents all over it, and then what, you're going to get it up on your 4-poster hoist and denib any tiny little bits of dirt under your sill panels? Well, I mean, I just don't care if there's a couple of nibs under, like there might be some there, and yes, I could do better, like I could do that, like, but it's just, it's not worth it. Like, you got to look at the car, and what is the car, you know what I mean? Like, it's an XF Falcon, or, you know, it's an old Commodore. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, the person that owns it doesn't even care about it. Like, I mean, I've got my little Corolla there. There's some imperfections in it, you know, but I don't even care. Like, it's a car that gets me around. Sure, I do like my car, don't get me wrong. But as I say, like, the overall presentation of my car is actually much above most people's cars, but there's still some imperfections in it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, it just seems like the people that are telling me that you need to do your absolute best on everything, it's like an ideological statement more so than an objective reality, because I would like to see all the work that you did, and I could guarantee that I would be able to sort of pick imperfections in it. I've been on a rant for the last 6 or 7 minutes, so I apologise about that. I hope you've enjoyed listening along. But all of that aside, we just gone and smashed the base coat down. So the first thing I put down was base coat blender. That's the stuff that looked a little bit milky. And then I used that minigun just to sort of keep the colour contained. Now that minigun was actually sent out by Spray Guns Direct recently, because DeWillis have actually recently done a rebranding on their Pro Lights and the entire Pro Light range. So I'll be doing a separate video dedicated to that in the future. But basically the minigun has been called the Pro Light S. That was the blue minigun that you saw me using a minute ago. And as it turns out, that gun there is slightly defective, that minigun. So I actually ended up sending that back, and also the GPG they call it, which is actually the new version of the Pro Light primer gun. I actually used that in the previous video on this car. That was also slightly defective. Now I couldn't actually fault the fan itself, but I looked at the air cap after spraying with it, and it had like an uneven build up on the air cap. Whereas I didn't have the build up on the Pro Light S, but I could actually see the fan was uneven. It was like bottom heavy, and when I actually turned it on the side, turned the air cap on the side and pumped some black paint out, it was actually pumping more out on the right hand side than it was on the left hand side. So it was actually running on the right hand side more so than the left hand side. So it definitely had a defective Pro Light S. This is the big brother, the Pro Light, the classic old Pro Light. So previously it was called GTI Pro Light, now it's called Pro Light, and that's pretty much the main difference. And look, as I say, I will be getting further into all those details in its own video. The reason I put that video off is because of those defects that I mentioned. So I'm actually going to give DeWillis an opportunity to respond, and I'm actually sort of like keen to see how they respond to it, because as I say, I've actually sent those guns back. So I'll be in, and I don't even want replacements. I really don't care. I've got enough spray guns. You guys all know that. So if they say, "Oh, we'll send another one out," I'll be like, "No, don't worry about it. I don't mind." You know, just I want to see what they have to say about it. Is it going to be a bigger issue? Is there a problem with all of them? Are they all like that? Was it a problem with the way the machines were set up? Did they miss it through their quality testing or something? But as I say, the main reason I'm holding off on doing that video is just to give them a chance to respond and see what they have to say. Look, I could easily go out and do a review, and I could say, hey, this gun didn't work, but this one's fine. So as I say, like the Pro Light, this one here, totally fine, and not a great deal has actually changed with it. But I have actually had a few people say, hey, what's going on with the Pro Light? Where are they? Are they discontinued? So technically the GTI Pro Lights have been discontinued, but they've just been slightly rebranded. So in case you missed it before, I've got the T110 air cap on this Pro Light at the moment, and I did actually change the settings from usual to clear this job here. Now most of the time, to get the factory orange peels, I'll be going for the TE20. So I find the TE20 to be the best air cap to get those factory finishes. It gets a nice amount of material on, but it's also pretty efficient as well. But a job like this, and especially another thing at this shop, they don't really mind how much clear you use, and they actually nearly expect you to use a little bit more on the kind of cars that we're working on. I do believe they get paid, well, quite a bit more than your average panel shops, you know, because we are working on high-end vehicles. So as you would imagine, the insurances for these kind of cars would be a lot more expensive, for the reason that when they do get into an accident, they can be done properly to the kind of standards that you would expect. But as I say, those kind of material consumptions have been going out the window a little bit lately, so I've definitely been upping the amount of clear that I use. Base coat hasn't really changed a great deal because I'm still using the Stando Blue, and you've just got to spray that stuff a certain way. It's not like you're gonna try and get that base coat any flatter. No, you just need to get the base coat on. But as I say, with the clear coat on these supercars, it's got to go on flat, and if that means that you have to get a little bit more overspray to get it on flatter, like you see here, you may notice that there is a little bit more overspray with this air cap. That's part of it, and then the other part is that I'm just not holding back. I'm just letting that high atomization come out of the gun. So obviously this job here is the two fenders and the front bumper, and I mixed up 1.1 liters of clear coat for this job. So usually I'd probably be around 800 mils or 700 mils, around there, but I deliberately did mix up a little bit more, and I was only left over with like less than 100 mils when the job was done anyway. So it's not like I'm not using it. And that's one thing that I always used to say to Alan. Like Alan Jones, my previous apprentice, I taught him quite well, and he was a good learner, you know, like you didn't have to tell him things 10 times, you know what I mean? So at the start I was telling him, you know, like we're using the expensive clear. Wasn't the top of the line, but it's still expensive stuff, you know, so you know, we've got to sort of watch out how much we use, and he was always good. But my original point was going to be that as long as you use all the paint, or close to, you know, like I don't care. Like if you need 2 liters to clear this job up, I know that's excessive, right? But my basic point is that just don't go and throw out 1.8 liters, you know what I mean? If that's how much you need to clear this job up, use it. But I just hate seeing it go to waste, because it's quite expensive, this clear, especially the clear that I'm using now. So the clear I'm using now is the Performance Pro Clear. It's actually one of the best clears I've ever used, to be honest. It's quite unique in the way that it dries. So it stays open for quite a while in the spray booth. So I mean like the flash time. So it doesn't go and flash off on you fast. It will stay sort of wet for quite a while until it gets heat onto it. But then when it does get the heat onto it, it will just dry, like basically fully cured within half an hour. Now this shop here, as I say, we do go above and beyond in most aspects. So they give every car and every primer job an hour's bake. So yeah, like it's pretty much fully cured after that. And another thing is that, like, I always used to wear my half mask, my respirator, when I'm unmasking jobs, because you would always get some of those gases still releasing as you're unmasking your job. And that's just what happens with most clear coats. Most 2-pack clear coats actually do take 2 weeks to a month to fully cure, right? So straight after the bake, they're still gassing out, right? You're still getting all those solvents releasing. Whereas I actually noticed when I went in to unmask this job here, you couldn't smell anything, because all the gases had already released in that hour's bake. So as I say, it's quite a unique clear. I'm unaware of any other clears that are quite like it. And it's reasons like that that I say that Axalta are leading the game at the moment with the automotive paints. So I used to be a Glazeret man through and through. So I started my apprenticeship in the year 2000, and I used Glazeret all the way up until 2012, and then I moved over to Standox. And I've been using Standox solvent system and water system for the last nearly 10 years actually, so on and off, depending on the shops I've worked in. But what I'm trying to get at is I've actually got a fair bit of experience with both systems, and I do believe that the Axalta systems are the ones that are leading the game. It feels to me a little bit like Glazeret sort of, they were leading, but then they dropped off. They weren't as far as I'm concerned anyway, they might not have done enough R&D, research and development and product development, whereas Axalta went all out, and this is the kind of product that they've gone and came up with. And the amount of gloss that you get out of this is absolutely incredible. And yeah, as I say, like how hard it goes in such a small window of time, again, it's absolutely incredible. So for a kind of shop like this, that's exactly what you need. We want to know exactly what that finish is going to look like before it leaves our shop. We don't want that clear coat still drying as it's leaving the shop, because as it dries, it can shrink. And as it shrinks, some of your D-nib marks can come back up, some of your repairs can start to show through. So eliminating that is actually a very good thing, especially for this shop. I mean, it's good for everybody else, but especially this kind of a shop where you really have that name and that reputation to hold up, and you don't want any comebacks. You don't want those cars looking bad a month later after they leave your shop. So as I say, it's a very hard clear coat to polish up because it does go very hard. It goes a lot harder than most clear coats do go. But one thing I would actually like to get into this workshop, and I'm just new, so you don't, you know, when you start at a new shop, you don't want to go and throw your weight around too much. You just got to sort of fit into the shop and then slowly, you know, show them the things that you know, I guess. But that's one thing that I do want to get into this shop is the 5000 grit pads. So they've got their Trizact 5000 grits. So they've got the 3000 grits here, but even with this clear, it's still a bit hard to polish up the 3000 grits. So, I mean, ideally we'll end up getting the 5000 and the 8000 grit pads, and then we'll barely even be doing any compounding. It'll just be a case of sanding, and then you straight up to your polishing stage. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Now, I actually had a couple of people, I posted some photos of this up on my Instagram page, and I asked one of my buddies, Jose from the Netherlands, I said, oh, which gun do you reckon I use to spray this one with? So I had a few other people piping in saying that they reckon I use the Pro Light. But my point is that I actually had somebody else say, oh, I reckon you should have used the Iwata WS. And to be absolutely honest, I do believe that that gun probably would have got a slightly flatter finish, but they are so unforgiving, those Iwata Supernova WS. They've got a very hard fan on them. So if you look at that fan side on, it's like a triangle with very sharp edges on it. Whereas if you look at the Pro Light fan, or even the T110 air cap fan on the gun that I used here, it's got a very curved fan. So for that reason, I've found it a lot more forgiving and a lot less likely to get runs. You can actually sort of like tilt that gun up or down with your wrist, and you're not going to overload. Say if you tilt it up, you're not going to overload the top of that spray fan. Whereas, as I say, I do actually agree that the WS is probably the better one if you do want dead flat finishes, but it's just so unforgiving. And especially because I've been only at this shop for a short amount of time, I'm really not in the point where I want to go and muck anything up. Like, they really did put their faith in me. Like, I'm not proven yet, I guess, at this shop. They don't know exactly what I'm capable of. So honestly, it was I was pretty proud, to be honest, that they did even let me do this job, because as I say, I've only been there for just over a month. So yeah, they put their faith in me to give me this job, and if I was to go and use that Supernova, I would give it probably 50-50 chance of me getting a big hanger in that thing. And last time I did use that Supernova, I got one hell of a big hanger on the quarter panel on this Black Benz. I actually did a video on that, so if you'd like to go and check out how to remove a big hanger, then you can go and see that video. But as I say, I haven't actually used my Supernova since that, and that was probably about a year or a year and a half ago, so it's been in the sin bin for a while. But for me, again, the Pro Light still wins just on consistency. I know exactly what I'm going to get out of it, and it just performs, and it's reliable. Yeah, trusty old workhorse. But all of that aside, I feel like I didn't touch on all the things that I usually would have touched on in a video like this. I just jumped behind the computer. It's Sunday night as of making this video, and I just started ranting. So I hope you at least enjoyed if you didn't learn anything out of it. But all that aside, We're going to have a polishing video on this one coming up soon, but before the polishing video does come up, we're going to be doing a polishing cart tour. So I'm going to give you guys a look at all the tools and materials and equipment that I use to do the polishing stage. The polishing is something that I've been enjoying a lot more, so yeah, be sure to hang around and check out that video. It'll be coming up soon. So until next time, get out there and paint some shit. Gunman out. I'd like to say a big thanks to everyone for watching, and if you'd like to support the channel further, you're more than welcome to go over and check out some of the merchandise we've got. My personal favorite is those spray suits, so they're a good quality Colad branded spray suit with the Gunman logo on it. There's also hats, drink coolers, hoodies and t-shirts, so be sure to go over and check out the link in the description if you are interested.